Right then, Hollywood loves selling you a good story. They love to tell you about the magic, the glamour, the razzle-dazzle, the song and dance. They want you to remember 1969's Paint Your Wagon as a big, rowdy, fun-filled musical. A rip-roaring western with two of the biggest stars on the planet, Clint Eastwood and Lee Marvin, singing their hearts out and having the time of their lives. Grand. That's the all guff. That's the poster. That's the lie they sold to the papers. The real story? The one with the carry-on, the blizzards, the rivers of mud, and the 20 million bill. The real story is about a can't-miss idea that was so head the ball from the very start that it became one of the most expensive, chaotic, and spectacularly tuneless disasters in movie history. It's the story of a studio getting notions about itself and setting fire to a mountain of cash. Come here to me, and I'll tell you about the absolute hames they made in the Oregon mud. So, what in God's name was the big idea? You have to understand the 1960s. The decade started with the studios on their knees thanks to that little box in the living room. Television was king. The only way to get the punters out of the house was to offer them something they couldn't get at home. A colossal epic. A roadshow. Something massive, 3 hours long, with an intermission and a souvenir program. For a while, it worked. Ben-Hur, Lawrence of Arabia. Big pictures. Then, in 1965, a miracle happens. 20th Century Fox, which was flat on its back, bleeding out after the Cleopatra Hames, releases The Sound of Music. And it makes all the money. All of it. It doesn't just make money, it makes obscene money. It saves the studio. It becomes the highest grossing film of all time. And the rest of Hollywood, the other bloated beasts, they look at this and they don't see a good film. They see a perfect recipe for success. The memo goes out from every studio head. Musicals. Make 'em. Big ones. Now. I don't care what it is. Just get me my Sound of Music. A blind panic sets in. Every studio starts tearing up its schedule, looking for its own musical cash cow. This is the carry-on that gives you Dr. Dolittle. This is how you get Star. This is how you get Hello, Dolly. All of them massive, bloated, and coming about 5 years too late. And over at Paramount Pictures, they were desperate to get in on the action. The new head of production, Robert Evans, a fella with notions of his own, wanted to make a splash. He wanted a colossal epic. So they dig up an old, half-forgotten Broadway show from 1951 called Paint Your Wagon. It was by Lerner and Lova. Now, that's royalty. These are the fellas who wrote My Fair Lady and Camelot. You can't get a better pedigree. The original show was fine. A bit old-fashioned, a bit corny, but it had a couple of good songs. They Call the Wind, Maria, I Talk to the Trees, Grand. So Paramount announces they're gonna turn this into their big roadshow event for 1969. The budget? A cool 10 million. What could possibly go wrong? First, they need a director. They get Joshua Logan. This fella was the definition of the all-guard. He'd done South Pacific, another big, colourful, splashy musical. He was a safe pair of hands. He was also, by 1968, seen as hopelessly out of date. But Paramount wanted safe. Then they need a script. And here's the first truly head-the-ball decision. They hire Paddy Chayefsky. Paddy Chayefsky, the fella who'd later write Network. The most cynical, angry, intellectual, brilliant writer in America. A man who hated nonsense. They ask him to adapt a jaunty 1950s musical. It's like hearing a butcher to perform brain surgery. It's like asking a wolf to babysit your sheep. Chayefsky being Chayefsky takes one look at the original story and throws it in the bin. He thinks it's sentimental all guff. He proceeds to write a dark, cynical, gritty, and deeply weird script about the death of the American West. It's all about greed, corruption, moral decay, and loneliness. It's a tragedy. He even writes in a modern plot point for 1968 standards about... Well, we'll get to the polyamory later. And the studio? They just nod along. They're so thrilled to have a prestige writer like Chayefsky, they don't seem to notice he's written a script that is the opposite of a jaunty musical. So now you have a head the ball combination, a dark, cynical script by Chayefsky, and an all-guard director, Logan, who is famous for big, colourful, sentimental fluff. This dog's dinner is already cooking, but now, the stars. This is the perfect recipe. Who do you get to star in your gritty, cynical, big-budget musical? Well, first, they go after Clint Eastwood. Now, Clint is the biggest tough guy on earth. He's the man with no name. He's the strong, silent type. He's hot off his spaghetti westerns. He's the definition of cool, and he's looking to stretch. Show his range. He hears big budget musical with Lerner and Loeva, and he thinks, grand, this'll make me a proper, respectable Hollywood star. This is my ticket out of just shooting people. So Clint's in, but they need a co-star. An older, grizzled partner. They go to Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin, the man who just won an Oscar for Cat Ballou. The man who starred in The Dirty Dozen. Lee Marvin is, without question, the hardest, scariest, most intimidating man in Hollywood. He chews gravel for breakfast. He's a brawler. He's a drinker. He is not a singer. So here's the notion. The absolute 100 carat head the ball idea at the heart of this whole thing. Right, lads. Here's the plan. We'll take two of the toughest men in Hollywood. Two fellas who have never ever sung a note professionally in their lives. One of them just growls and the other one whispers. And we'll get them to sing and dance in a musical. A musical! It'll cost 10 million! What a notion! This is the arrogance of the 1960s studio system. This is the bloated beast getting notions about itself. They were so convinced that star power plus musical equals money that they forgot the one basic fundamental rule. You know, the stars of your musical should probably be able to sing. Get way out of that. This was Hollywood. They had sound engineers. They'd fix it later. The recipe was set. Take a dated Broadway show. Hire a cynical genius to write a dark script. Hire an all-guard director to film it like a jaunty 1950s show and pin the whole 10 million colossal gamble on two movie stars who cannot sing. This wasn't a perfect recipe for success. This was a dog's dinner from day one, and they hadn't even started shooting yet. The film goes into production in 1968. The budget is 10 million. The schedule is 16 weeks. It would wrap 26 weeks later at a cost of 20 million. That's 20 million in 1969 money, over 170 million in today's money. They didn't just go over budget, they doubled it. So what happened? Murphy's Law, that's what. If it could go wrong, it went spectacularly, expensively wrong. This wasn't a film set. It was a carry-on of biblical proportions. It was an absolute hames. Let's break down the disaster. First, the location. The logistical nightmare. Director Joshua Logan, the all-guard fella, decides he wants realism. This is the new buzzword. He doesn't want a Hollywood backlot where you can control the light and the weather. Way out of that. That's old-fashioned. No, he wants the real West. So he flies all over America in a helicopter, searching for his perfect spot. And he finds it, a remote, untouched valley near a little town called Baker, Oregon. It's beautiful. It's majestic. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's 40 miles from the nearest proper town. There are no hotels. There are no restaurants. There's no anything. It's just trees. But Logan has his notions. This is it, he says. We'll build No Name City right here, from scratch. This is the colossal gamble. This is the arrogance. Instead of using a set or a real ghost town, they decide to build an entire functioning town in a remote, inaccessible wilderness. They hire hundreds of construction workers. They cut down thousands of trees. They ship in tons of lumber, equipment, and supplies. They build houses, saloons, a church, a 2-story brothel. The cost is astronomical. The budget is already hemorrhaging, and they haven't filmed a single frame. They have to build a camp for the crew with trailers and generators. They have to fly in the cast and crew, housing them in motels 40 miles away. The commute to the set takes over an hour each way over rough, unfinished dirt roads. They are, quite literally, acting de maggot in the middle of Pro, a forest. And then, the weather hits. This is Oregon. This isn't sunny California. It rains. And rains. And rains. The entire multi-million-dollar set, this monument to studio arrogance, turns into a sea of mud, a swamp, a quagmire. Trucks are sinking up to their axles. Expensive camera equipment is being ruined. The actors in their big heavy wool costumes are slogging through muck up to their knees. They're trying to film these jaunty musical numbers in a literal bog. The schedule, the 16-week schedule, goes right out the window. Days are lost, then weeks. The production grinds to a halt. They're sitting around in the rain, in the middle of nowhere, with the clock ticking. The budget, 10 million, is a memory. It's 12 million, 14 million, 15 million. Paramount is in a full-blown panic. Robert Evans is calling Logan, screaming, "What is going on? You're bankrupting us!" And Logan says, "It's the rain, we need realism." To fix the mud, they have to ship in thousands of tons of gravel just to make the roads passable. More money. The crew is miserable. They're isolated. They're cold. They're wet. They're living in this carry-on. They start calling the film The Morons, a play on the Mormons who are characters in the film. And just when they think it can't get any worse, it snows. A freak summer blizzard hits the set. Snow. In June. They're trying to film a rowdy Gold Rush musical in a snowdrift. They have to use machines to melt the snow off the roofs for the next shot. The entire production is cursed. It's a logistical nightmare of head the ball proportions. And right in the middle of this absolute hames is Lee Marvin. This is the second part of the disaster. The diva behavior, or in this case, the drunk behavior. Lee Marvin, the Oscar winner. Getting paid more than God. A reported 1 million plus a cut of the profits. Spoiler, there were no profits. He arrives on this set. He sees the mud. He sees the rain. He sees the all-guard director, Joshua Logan, trying to get him to dance, to do choreography. And he decides, no. Marvin's solution to the chaos, the cold, and the boredom? Drink. And I don't mean a pint after work, I mean drink. From morning till night. By all accounts, Lee Marvin was drunk for most of the production. He was the king of chaos. He was the head the ball holding a 20 million production hostage. He hated Logan. Logan was old school Broadway. He wanted to talk about motivation and character arcs and the magic of theatre. Marvin was new school Hollywood. He'd roll his eyes and say, "Just tell me where to stand, Josh." Then he'd stumble. The carry-on was legendary. Marvin, supposed to be in a scene, would be found passed out in his trailer, or he'd be in the local town of Baker, starting fights in bars. The production had to hire minders 24/7 just to keep him from being arrested or killed. He would show up on set, barely able to stand, and Logan, who was a teetotaler, would have to try and film a complex musical number with him. The crew, who were miserable, loved him. He was their hero. He was the one acting de maggot on their behalf, sticking it to the all-guard director. He was the spirit of anarchy in the middle of this corporate disaster. But the other stars? They were trapped. Poor Jean Seberg. She was a serious actress, famous for French New Wave films like Breathless. She's the female lead, and she is completely, utterly lost. She's trapped in a mud pit, surrounded by a drunken boys club, in a film that has no idea what to do with her. She was miserable. And then there's Clint Eastwood. Clint, the ultimate professional, the fella who just wants to show up, say his lines, hit his mark, and go home. He is furious. He's watching this circus. He's watching Marvin, drunk. He's watching Logan, clueless. He's watching the money burn. He's seeing his own career flash before his eyes, stuck in this 20 million dog's dinner. They say this film, this absolute hames, is the entire reason Clint Eastwood became a director. He vowed right there in the Oregon mud that he would never again in his life be at the mercy of a head the ball like Logan or a carry-on artist like Marvin. He would be in control, he would direct himself, and that's exactly what he did. So you've got a logistical nightmare, you've got a drunken star. What about the perfect recipe? The musical part? Oh, this is the best bit. The singers who can't sing. Joshua Logan, to his credit, tries. He tries to get them to sing. It's a disaster. Clint Eastwood, he tries. He's got this little breathy, whispery voice. He sounds like he's telling a secret to his horse. He's so embarrassed by it. The crew said he'd only record his songs if the studio was completely empty and dark. He sings a song called I Talk to the Trees, and it's something. It's like a ghost trying to order a drink. But Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin. Marvin doesn't even try to sing. He's not gonna perform. He's Lee Marvin. They get him in the studio to record his big number, Wandering Star. The orchestra starts, the conductor cues him, and Marvin just growls. He talks in a low, gravelly monotone, like a man reading his grocery list at the bottom of a well, under a wandering star. The producers are horrified, the sound engineers are looking at each other. This is their star, this is their musical. They do 30, 40 takes. It doesn't get better, it just gets lower and drunker. Finally, they just give up. They have no choice. They take his one gravelly vocal track and they surround it with a massive booming 60-person male choir just to drown him out and give it some tune. And the funniest part? The head the ball joke of the whole thing? When the soundtrack album is released, Marvin's Wandering Star becomes a hit. A #1 hit in the UK. It kept the Beatles out of the top. Spot! It was so weird, so head the ball, that people bought it as a joke. It was a novelty. The studio, of course, didn't get the joke. They thought, see, it's brilliant, we're geniuses. They were acting to Maggot to the very end. So what is this film they're making in the mud? What's the story? It's an absolute dog's dinner. The script is dark, the direction is jaunty, the stars can't sing, and the plot? What a notion. The plot is that Lee Marvin finds Clint Eastwood in a canyon, saves his life, and they become partners in the gold rush town. Then a stagecoach crashes and a Mormon fella with 2 wives shows up. The miners, who haven't seen a woman in months, decide to buy one of the wives. At auction. This is a musical comedy. Lee Marvin, in a drunken bid, buys her. Elizabeth, played by Jean Seberg, so now she's married to Lee Marvin, but then Lee Marvin gets wanderlust and leaves. He goes off prospecting, and he tells Clint, you take care of her. So, Clint moves in, and he and Elizabeth fall in love, and then Lee Marvin comes back, and he's not even mad, he's just confused. And the film's solution to this, the film's big modern idea, written by Paddy Chayefsky and directed by all-guard Joshua Logan, polyamory. I am not joking. The solution is that she will be married to both of them. At the same time, a throuple. This is their big, family-friendly roadshow musical. In 1969, it's a dog's dinner about a 3-way marriage. This head the ball idea is coming from the all-guard director Logan, who thinks he's making South Pacific. It is baffling. The film's climax? The big finish they spent millions on? The town of No Name City has built tunnels under all the buildings to collect the gold dust that falls through the floorboards. And the tunnels, of course, collapse. Because reasons. The entire multi-million-dollar town that they spent months and millions building in the mud is systematically, plank by plank, destroyed. It sinks into the ground. A more perfect, on-the-nose metaphor for a production you will never find. They built a colossal monument to their own arrogance and then just buried it in the mud. Finally, after 26 weeks, after 20 million, the carry-on is over. The film is finished, Paramount, now 20 million in the hole, has to sell this thing. They release it as the big event of 1969, the Roadshow musical. The critics take out their knives. They don't just dislike it, they hate it. They call it baffling, a colossal bore, tuneless, an endurance test. They point out the obvious, the stars can't sing. They call it a 3-hour musical with no music. The public, who in 1965 loved the sound of music, has moved on. It's 1969. This is the year of Easy Rider. This is the year of Midnight Cowboy. Audiences don't want a 3-hour, head-the-ball musical about polyamory with two fellas who can't sing. They want motorcycles, and drugs, and rock and roll. The All Guard has delivered a dinosaur. The film is a catastrophic bomb. It's a bloated beast that dies on arrival. It made a fraction of its cost back. It was a financial black hole that almost crippled Paramount. So what killed the film? Was it Lee Marvin's drinking? Was it the mud? Was it Clint's whispering? Was it the snow? Get way out of dat. The film was dead before the first camera rolled. This wasn't a movie. It was a colossal gamble made by a studio getting notions about itself. This is the end of an empire. This is the 1960s studio system in a nutshell. A bloated beast, convinced of its own genius, thinking it could just buy a hit. The recipe is perfect, they said. Musicals are hot, westerns are hot, stars are hot. They thought they could just throw 20 million at a head-the-ball idea and the public would line up. But as me all fella used to say, a nod is as good as a wink to a blind horse. Everyone could see this was a disaster except the people in charge. Paint Your Wagon, along with Dr. Dolittle and Hello Dolly, wasn't just a flop, it was the end. These films killed the big budget musical for a generation. They were the rotten ships that finally sank the All Guard. They were the last gasp of a dying system. A system that thought bigger is better, and stars fix everything. It was a massive, expensive, hollow, tuneless monument, all fur coat and no knickers. So now you know the real story. Right, I'm off. Slán Cha.